first camp set up there, I spent a couple of days in Shemelba. I spent several days in Ma'aini, and I spent a day in Adi Harush. This is Adi Harush, the third camp and the most recent to be set up. And here you really see a camp in its early stages, where this is really a semi-desert environment, as all three camps are. Shemelba is even hotter and drier if you haven't been there. People start out in tents when they first get there. When they come across the border, the Ethiopians take the people to a reception center at Nandabaguma, and then they are assigned up to a camp. At this point, people are being sent to Adi Harush. The other two are nominally at full capacity. I'll come back to that issue because it's more complicated than that. But the tents are meant to last for a year, and after or during that time when people are expected to be working on building more lasting shelters, something like what you see here. And the other camps, Shemelba, this is Shemelba, actually part of it, have a much more permanent feel to them, almost like small functioning villages, outlying villages. The thing that is very different about them, of course, is that these are villages, but they are inhabited in large part by young people, not by the elderly, by families. There are plenty of kids here, but there are also a very large number of young men, and young men and women from urban backgrounds. They're not villagers, and yet here they are now out in a very taxing rural environment. I was in Shemelba for one of the distributions, the monthly distributions, and of course a lot of goods coming from the U.S. through the World Food Program, but this is all run by the Ethiopian Refugee Authority. The UN, UNHCR works with them to gather supplies from various UN agencies. And it's a fairly smooth operation. One of the things that I learned while I was there, within my Orthodox church that's been built there, there were also some 15 small Protestant churches there, and there was a mosque. So it begins to take on the characteristic of a diverse and functioning community. The Bar Royale is a very popular spot. People recreating favorites from home. And actually, the Bar Royale, you know the Bar Royale, that tends to be a place for young people to go, right?
Yeah, in Asmara.
Again, it shows you something about the population. A lot of Eritreans have set up small shops and businesses, enterprising as they are. I was particularly struck by one, a guy who he'd come out of the National Service, he'd come here, he had gone to Addis and he'd come back and he had organized the production, or I don't know how you would say it, the setting up of a whole set of weights and other exercise bars and platforms, and was running a gym, which cost a little bit to use, but he was trying to get the young guys to go in there and lift. There's a woman who had run a bar, I believe, in Karen. Here she had worked as a waitress until she got enough money to open her own cafe. You can only see part of the background there, but that's a mural from Asmara that includes the cathedral, the Orthodox church, the mosque, and a number of other major buildings. There's a big Asmara over. Very nice. Another couple of women who had set up a salon. People aren't sitting still. But the day that I got there was the day they marked the anniversary of independence. And they did it with a big celebration, celebrating independence with a kind of Eritrean idol program, where people were singing songs, reading poetry, and speaking, largely in criticism of the situation at home and of the regime. So, strong nationalist sense as Eritreans, deep anger over the regime. The two were not in contradiction. I don't think I probably tell you. A number of women participating as well. There were prizes handed out at the end. I don't have any pictures of that. It was an all-day affair. Out in the rest of the camp, there were a lot of small children with families. Also, a lot of young men and women in the sort of 10 or 12 to 15 age group. And this was one of the more disturbing features of the camps, and also the reception center I visited, the Ndabaguma Center, where I also spent a day. There are more and more young people, unaccompanied minors, coming into Ethiopia. Many come from the border areas. A lot of people in the camps here, of course, come from Sanafe and from Sorona and from that area of Kalaguzai and Sarai. They come across sometimes by themselves, sometimes in groups of 2 or 3. They tell harrowing stories of the difficulty sneaking around from bush to bush to get out. And sometimes they're out looking for older brothers or sisters who have left before them. Sometimes for a parent who had to flee because of some sudden political problem at home. Often they don't find them because the older siblings have moved on somewhere else. So the Ethiopians were keeping them in the reception center until they could organize their transfer to largely Miami was where most of the unaccompanied minors were. And they have a separate area. The youngest of them have house mothers. And the older ones live in kind of dormitories with each other. I don't know if you can really pick this up from this photograph, but this is, they're all young women. One of the fears, of course, with this kind of a situation is that the girls will get caught in the trafficking operations there. So there's a lot of monitoring to try to keep an eye on that. The last shots I have, really, of the kids were from the reception center at Ndabaguma, where they'd been on the angry side. She's been there for more than 3 weeks, but they weren't ready to pass them on unless they were sure they would be secure. Boys studying. There are schools. The Miami camp has a school, I believe, at least up to 5th grade. Adi Harush only has first grade. So camp is not as bad here as camps are in other parts of the world and as other camps for Eritreans have been in the past. But it's a very discouraging and people who have left national service, not because of an anti-nationalist feeling, but because they felt they were in a dead-end position, sometimes for years on end, with no skills developing, no chance for education, and no future. So they come out to the camp and they feel like they're stuck in a similar position. Back to that image of Petros. You may see the resemblance here. Petros' twin son and daughter, Hannah Petros and Zariah Petros, are now in Addis Ababa. Back there's Hannah. They were 11 when their father was taken prisoner in 2001. Hannah said she felt she was lucky in a way because their dad had gone out on a run and was snatched while he was out on his jogging. So they didn't have to see an ugly and violent scene in the house, and I have no doubt, knowing him, that he didn't go quietly. They remained there. Of course, I think probably most people are familiar with the story, but just as a quick reminder, their mother, Esther, was in the U.S. when this happened. She went back at the end of 2003 to straighten out family affairs, see her kids. She had gotten permission, a promise of safe passage from infamous Irma Asmorum, who was then the Eritrean ambassador to the U.S., and he may have been the ambassador to Canada, too, I don't know. No,
Yes, in the U.S., yeah.
And he had promised safe passage. As soon as she landed at the airport, she was taken, and they never saw her. So they haven't seen either of their parents since they were 11. They were raised by a grandmother, and they went to the Italian school. After they graduated, their younger and older brother and grandmother made an effort to escape. They were caught. Grandmother and young brother got away. But the two twins were put in a whole series of military prisons, moved around 3 months at a time, to keep from escaping. Finally, they got out a bit over a year ago. Of course, they immediately escaped again. This time going one by one in a rather difficult and dangerous escape out to Sudan and then into Ethiopia. Irony of ironies, today the safest place for Eritreans to go is the place described by Eysc as the country's strategic enemy, Ethiopia. They, by the way, are trying to get permission to come to either Canada or the U.S. right now. That's it for the slides. I apologize for the